Hello and welcome back to Suzerain. If you'd like to check out the game, there is a link in the description. And when we left off, we literally just got past the prologue and basically set up our time in Chapter 1. And so, as you can no doubt tell at the top of the screen here, we have an economy bar, which is our economic development, apparently. We also have a budget, and we also have wealth. Now, obviously, personal wealth is definitely going to be something that I'm probably not going to be focusing on that much because, let's face it, if I'm doing my job right, I probably shouldn't have that much money, right? I mean, I should be okay. You know, I should be able to take care of myself and my family and so on and so forth. But I really shouldn't be like a millionaire or a billionaire or something like that. Anyway, let's take a look at the news, shall we? Okay, here we go. President Anton Rayne has been sworn into duty in a great ceremony in Wholesword. Thousands have attended the ceremony where President Rayne has met with his supporters for the first time after his election. In his inauguration, Rayne spoke of unity, bringing focus on people's right for a free and prosperous life. For many generations, this country and its long history have kept us tied to an idea, the idea of unity, said the new president before he went on to start his first day in the Maroon Palace. All right, so they just basically give you like 2 paragraphs, and then you can read those and see what's going on here. Sordland today has said this: the new president has been sworn into office by the Chief Justice Orso Hawker, another great win for the USP, and Anton Rayne, who managed to get 37% of the general vote. The first congratulations came from Kesaro Kibina of the National Front Party. The runner-up of the general vote, the PFJP, didn't concede until the last minute, but the results were clear since several hours in. Thousands of supporters have gathered in the streets of Dare, chanting campaign slogans, waving flags, and displaying USP party banners to display unwavering support to the newly elected president. The public mood is very positive in the city from all accounts on the ground. The city is celebrating that a Dare-born president with humble roots is now sitting in the Maroon Palace. Yeah, now that's also something, that's kind of also the reason why I wanted to really, push home that kind of thing, because Dare is, where is that? Is that, can I actually find where that is? Because, yeah, there it is, right there. Alright, that's actually fantastic. There it is. Okay, so I believe we can also rename these, can we? Can we also No, we can't rename these, but we can take a look at them more specifically here, and you can see what their GDP is and the population rank and so on and so forth, and how above sea level they are and all that wonderful stuff. Alright, so that's all very well and good, but yeah, that was the main reason why I wanted to actually be from a very humble part of the country. That's what I was aiming for, at least. President Anton Rayne has been elected 4th president of Sordland in the 7th Swordish elections. The United Sordland Party has won the election on Sunday with just over 37% of the vote, while Frans Richter, the leader of the People's Freedom and Justice Party, could gain just over 20%. Kesaro Kibina, the head of the right-wing National Front Party, is in 3rd place, with just over 11%. The Communist Party of Sordland and the Workers' Party of Bludia both won just below 10% of the vote, failing to pass the 10% election threshold. The new term begins with the opposition of PFJP and NFP under the USP government. The unrepresented votes below the threshold resulted in the USP taking 52% of the seats in the Grand National Assembly, giving them the law-making power. The new seat numbers have been finalized as follows. The USP, which is our party of course, has 130. The PFJP, which is indeed the People's Freedom and Justice Party, okay, interesting, has 70 seats. And the NFP, which is the right-wing National Front Party, they have 40. And then the independents have 10. So this is actually very similar to how English politics is done, with a lot of different parties, a lot of different seats going to different people, and because usually in England, or at least shall we say in the United Kingdom, I don't know really how it's done in Wales and Scotland and so on, but generally over here we have many different parties, and they all have a varying amount of seats dependent on obviously who gets the majority of the vote, that particular party gets the main presence, shall we say, in Parliament. Anyway, that was a little excerpt from the Lacavan Times, and we're going to go on to the radical voice of the unheard. Oh dear. All right, so this is going to be a little bit more polarizing, I think. Another USP president is the title. How many times will people fall for the same trap? We've seen this before with Colonel Sol, who supposedly saved this country and brought stability in times of chaos. His stability, however, meant a life of oppression. Any opposing voices were silenced, and many were persecuted. Next was Alfonso, who was elected as the liberal reformer to bring change to the USP and Sordland. Seeing his unfortunate inability, his own cabinet resigned. As the third USP candidate becomes president, it is high time to realize that real change won't come from their party. Ooh, okay, so they are very much against us. Let's see if we can maybe win them over a little bit as time goes on. But of course, it doesn't really matter what the newspapers say at the end of the day, does it? Probably not. Okay, now this is restructure the infrastructure. This is from The Economist. This actually might be quite important for us to read because I do want to make sure that the economy is extremely strong and make sure that everyone has a pretty decent way of life. But let's have a look. After the recent successful mega infrastructure projects from United Cantona and Valgsland, the world is warming up to the idea as a source of growth and employment. Okay, but is there any truth to this success? Our investment analysis indicates that infrastructure investments can be fruitful in the short term, but even more so in the long term, especially if they focus on linking economic nodes that business logistics depend on. This is, however, the first step. The crux of the matter is diversification of investment where the government supports employment and growth. It is key to help private businesses with government contracts, tax breaks, and political support in order to create a self-sufficient and dynamic economy. Alright, so helping private businesses, well, that very much depends, of course, because if I'm helping small businesses or if my government is helping small businesses, then I think that is very much worthwhile, but I don't know whether we really want to help the big corporations, because they're pretty fine as they are, aren't they? Anyway, the government's role in Sordland should be to integrate to the world economy and reap the benefits of global trade. Economic growth and income inequality in this country won't be fixed otherwise. And then they go on to say, end Solonomics, which is obviously the Colonel Sol's whole thing. A new era begins for Sordland, and it holds many economic questions that will need to be answered by President Rayne. Our top economic analysts, with consultation from the National Business Council, have released a comprehensive report on the performance of the past 20 years. A certain section of the report stands out. The last 2 4-year plans of the planned doctrine created a budget deficit and a clear reduction of the industrial production output. This was specifically due to mismanagement and inefficient bureaucracy. The year-on-year growth, budget balance, and production index values indicate that the 2 most productive consecutive years had been when the privatization program of Alfonso began in 1949. Our editorial team, with the help of experts like Mikhail Avon and Edith Agnock, have come to the conclusion that the recession was not actually caused by Alfonso's bold privatization program, but by the drastic obstructions of state executives hindering the plan. President Rayne must take the advice of planned economy proponents around him with a pinch of salt. Otherwise, he could find himself in the same spot of Tarquin Sol in the mid-40s. Alright, so yeah, that is absolutely fine, and we don't have anything from Geopolitico at the moment. Alright, good to know. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Okay, so read the report from whole source, so we have logistical issues. Read the report here, we have general staff gathering, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's read this. Okay, logistical issues. The mayor of Holsword reports that the rising population and fast urban expansion has resulted in high levels of congestion in the city traffic. The logistics report underlines increased traffic and slow transportation routes as the biggest problems of the capital. The mayor also reported that the absence of a well-designed, large, land-based logistics center where all transporters come together is one of the greatest problems for domestic transporters, because Holsword is a big metropolis. Transporters are scattered all over Holsword, having established such centres in 10 different districts. Well, that's not very good, is it? That is not very good at all, so we're going to have to do something about that. Can I actually do that right now? Is there actually anything that I can do? Can I, because here's the thing, I still obviously don't really know too much about how to play the game or anything like that, so I would like to be able to fix all those issues, but maybe I have to read all of these reports first. The General Staff convened right after the election to congratulate our victory. All branches of the Swordish Armed Forces were represented in the meeting that took place at Camp Strongarm with massive security measures. The Chief of the Armed Forces, Valken Kruger, made a public press statement highlighting the increasing chances of military confrontation in eastern Mokopa and requested support to strengthen the military. Okay, strengthening the military, okay, sure. Eastern... where is that? Eastern... Mokopa? I have no idea where that is. Is that actually in Holsword or is that somewhere else? I'm not actually seeing anything right now, to be honest. Okay, well, whatever the case, let's have a look. Aha! Peter Vecturn arrived a couple of minutes early and sat across from me. He was struggling to hold back his smile. We did it, Anton. We won, finally. All those years with our noses to the grindstone paid off. Peter's eyes sparkled. The strain of the past months had put a damper on his usual rakish charm, but today he was looking and acting more like his old self. He loosened his tie and undid the top 2 buttons of his shirt. Enjoying the new secretary I picked out for you? Thought you'd appreciate her gorgeous set of talents. It's a shame the rest of your staff aren't as easy on the eyes. He gestured to the slight paunch that protruded over his waistband. But hey, back in university, did you ever imagine we would be sitting here in the Maroon Palace? We have to celebrate this grand victory, I was going to say. This great victory. Okay, let's celebrate. I got my hands on something special. An early Maroon 30-year-old. Okay, we will celebrate at the inaugural ball. Just hang in there until the evening. This is not the time to celebrate. We have work to do. I'm going to say we'll celebrate at the inaugural ball. Just hang in there. Looking forward to it. Evelyn hopes to congratulate you in person there. Good to know. It's been some time since the last time I saw her. I'm sure the kids would love to see their Uncle Peter for the first time as the Vice President, or we'll see each other at the ball then. It's been some time since the last time I saw her. I think it was Frank's birthday. We've barely had enough time for our families over these past months, haven't we? Peter had a wistful look in his eyes. He and Evelyn had never been able to have kids of their own. During our campaign, the opposition had floated the rumor that he'd fathered illegitimate children during his wilder years, but it had never been substantiated. The door swung open, and Lucien Gallard, my chief strategist, walked in. He was a compact man with sharp, bird-like features. After briefly surveying the room from wall to wall, he sat down, poured a glass of water, and opened his briefcase in a series of quick, graceful movements. Gentlemen, the tall case clock in the room struck 3 o'clock. Damn, you are exactly on time. Hello, Peter. Lucien then turned towards me. He very slightly bowed his head. Glad to see you, Lucien. It is a privilege to be here, sir. Lucien spoke in soft-clipped tones that immediately drew your attention towards what he had to say. Peter and I waited for him to proceed. Let's start by evaluating our current situation. The majority of the Swordish people demand change. They are more concerned about the economy than the constitution, but they blame the system for their problems. People are losing their trust in our democracy. Why do you think radicals like Bernard Circus are becoming more popular? Everyone's expecting us to bring the change the last government did not. Franz Richter, leader of the Reformists, believes that true change can only be accomplished by transferring some of our powers to the Assembly. I will move into the details of their demands shortly. Okay, let's have a look. Oh, this is interesting. I agree with the Reformists. Our responsibility is to democratize our broken system. Or we need to listen to the people if we want to serve this country. Or if we lose power, we won't be able to execute the changes we need to make for the good of the country. I mean, like, we need to listen to the people, yeah, sure, but we also need to make sure that we fix the broken system. I'm going to say we'll listen to the people for the moment. That's exactly what we campaigned for, a true change that will move the country forward. We will need many allies against the old guard in the government. Mr. Richter managed to persuade many members of Assembly to give their support for drafting a new constitution. Reformist politicians are quickly increasing in number. While the reformist wing inside our party is still a minority, they could have a tripartisan majority in the Assembly, especially if they unite under Friends Richter. The USP reformists aren't wrong to agree that we need change, but we should be in charge. That's one of our options. Mr. Richter could be a potential ally in our goal to maintain a majority in the Assembly. I'm going to say that, actually. Forming alliances is maybe a good idea. He's definitely key in this, says Lucian. The reformists' demands are clear. They want to limit the president's veto powers, ensure that the Supreme Court is independent, and take away the court's right to vote on constitutional amendments. Right. Okay, so let's see. I support the reformists. We need a proper balance of power in this country. We must listen to their demands, otherwise we are no different than the previous administrations, or I won't allow them to influence me. We will shape our own future. We must listen to their demands, otherwise we are no different than the previous administrations. That is what I will say. I agree. We can't ignore the winds of change, after all. The old guard will do its best to preserve the Constitution. Chief Justice Hawker and his allied judges have a great influence over the Supreme Court, which will be tough to break. The court also has the final say over constitutional legislation. Without their approval, we cannot even change it. Okay, so we need a comprehensive bill to balance the power structure more fairly, or we must break the power of the Supreme Court. I'm going to say we'll need a comprehensive bill to balance the power structure more fairly. I agree, the old guard won't like this, though. A comprehensive reform that would make the reformists happy would mean maintaining a balance between all branches of government, which means removing your absolute veto as well. The reformists demand that all loopholes in the Constitution are closed. Well, it looks like we have many challenges ahead. Well, I'm going to say we cannot allow obstructionists to exist. Oh, okay, let's just take them out the back then. No, let's not do that. We can't underestimate this situation. Just going to say that. We can figure it out. Our party still holds 130 out of 250 seats in the Assembly. We've got the power. However, to reform the Constitution, we must receive a 2/3 majority in the Grand National Assembly, which is 166 votes, and a simple majority in the Supreme Court that equates to 6 votes. After we have settled on how to proceed, we will need to talk with our party figures. Our first goal must be to get the 150 signatures needed to start the process. Following the green light from the USP, we will reach out to the other party leaders to see if they would back our draft. The last step is to convince the justices of the court. The entire process will take a long time, but we must start working with the Reform Committee to evaluate all possibilities for a new constitution as soon as possible. Alright, let's have a look here. Okay, we will write a more democratic constitution with the reformists. That's one option. The new constitution should give the president wide-ranging powers to lead Sordland into the future, or we could work with the old guard to protect our existing extensive powers. I'm going to say a more democratic constitution. That's what we've been preparing for internally. Don't forget that promise is what got us elected. The key thing here will be strengthening the power of the Assembly, which we already lead with a majority. Peter nodded in agreement. Yes, the divisions of power need to be rebalanced for a better Sordland. According to the initial draft we made with the reformists, there are 2 changes to the Constitution that are not open for their discussion. Lucian opened his dossier. First, the Supreme Court will no longer vote on constitutional amendments. Oh, that's kind of harsh. Not sure if I can even make that happen. Second, the President's absolute veto will be taken away. This can be replaced with a limited veto system by fixing the current loopholes. Right, I have no problems with these, but the Supreme Court is going to be extremely hard to work with at this point. I'm not entirely sure how we're going to get them to be swayed, so we're going to try it, but I don't know whether this is going to work. I have no problems with these clauses. Let's work with them. Alright. Yes, sir. Lucian nodded. We will form a reform committee together with all parties and start reaching out to all the stakeholders in the Assembly and the Court for a new constitution. By later in the year, we should have an idea of the reform contents and what the other parties want. Lucian took notes. Another important point, we must be aware of the Lotharberg Group. The oligarchs convene under this organization to influence economic policies. Conrath led it for a long time before falling ill. The new leader is Mr. Walter Tusk. According to reports, some members of the National Business Council are in their pockets. Tusk and the group will surely try to bribe us in exchange for special economic protections. Ah, okay, let's see. I will enter into a dialogue with them eventually. We need to be diplomatic, alright? So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to divulge too much of my potential my potential perspective here, because I'm not entirely sure if I entirely trust Lucian at this point, but we're going to see. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. You never know who's in whose pocket at this point. So I'm going to say I will enter a dialogue with them eventually. We need to be diplomatic. Wise approach. It's good to understand and see if we can reach a middle ground. Lucian looked at Peter. As far as I know, Marcel Caronti has some strong ties to this group. His influence could definitely be an asset for us, but I'm sure he'll want something in return. Ah, here we go. Okay, so we have 4 options. I am aware of Mr. Caronti's wide network that could come in handy. The group's influence is an important force, one that we should use to our administration's advantage. That group is dependent on our economic policies. They can't move a finger without us. Or Tusk is heading the group. We should make sure he is on our side. Okay, that's kind of difficult. I'm gonna say that group is dependent on our economic policies. They can't move a finger without us. I wouldn't be so optimistic. The capital they represent could do a lot of damage if it was diverted. Ooh, okay, so that might have been the wrong decision. We need to tread carefully on all sides with all power players to survive our term. I need to underline the seriousness of the situation. The military and the general staff are a powerful element in the state, and as history tells us, a dangerous one too. We do have some room to make structural changes by reducing their budget, for example, but it is quite limited. Alright. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, with the Rumberg threat on the horizon, we can't reduce our defense capability and anger our general staff. I'm going to say that, because generally I don't really want to be invaded. I mean, if that is actually even like a possibility, because it might be. So I'm going to say that. I would advise the same. The budget should be maintained, and we should refrain from confronting the military too directly. Defense Minister Josef Lancia is more loyal to us compared to General Kruger, a fact that obviously can change with our actions. Either way, I see a potential rift between the two since they are clearly of different minds. If we act strongly against the military, both of those guys will unite against us. I agree with Lucian. We need to tread carefully here. Lucian looked at his watch. Well then, gentlemen, precisely 30 minutes. This concludes our political briefing for today. Our next meeting will be about our media strategy. Talk to you soon, sir. I will keep in touch. See you both at the meeting. Lucian and Peter bid their farewells and left. Alright, so there you go, saving the game. Alright, okay, so that was basically it. Okay, so wait a minute. We got the country overview, political overview, notes, and settings. Okay, so here we go. Okay. Oh dear. Okay, wow, this is actually kind of insane. I am actually kind of daunted by huge amounts of options here. I'm kind of daunted by these, but these are all extremely cool in my opinion. Okay, so let's have a look. A reform committee has been formed to discuss the possibilities of a new constitution with all parties in the government. Okay, good to know. You know what? Let me actually just have a look here. Read the report from Whole Sword. Public opinion report. Briefing on the current economic situation. Okay, this is the public opinion report. People's views on the need for democratic reform in the government structure has changed over the last decade. Reformist propaganda from the leader of the People's Freedom and Justice Party, Franz Richter, has resulted in a massive increase in the demands for democratic reforms. It is estimated that currently 55% of the population supports the reformist ideas. Okay, so in my opinion, working with them is probably going to make the most sense, at least at the moment. Meeting on media strategy, briefing on the current economic situation. Let's do the briefing right here. Simon Hall, Gus Manga, and Lilius Graf were about to arrive at the White Room for our scheduled economy meeting. This was the room in the Maroon Palace where all important meetings were held. 2 assistants arrived first, carrying a heavy projector. They stood with it by the door, waiting for the ministers to enter. From the hallway, I heard Lilius Graf's voice. She was using the patient, almost motherly tone she often took in heated arguments. Gus, do you really think that such an economically advanced area is more in need of investment than England? Lilius, my interior minister, strode in. She was clad in shades of brown and beige. The only spot of color, a bright yellow Nourist star on her necklace. Gus followed close behind. Don't be an idiot, Lilius. What about the unemployment crisis the Greater Holsword and Giesland regions are going through? These areas are our economic heartland. Gus curled his hands into fists. The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development's temper hadn't changed since his days in the Alfonso administration, but neither had his reputation for getting things done. His far-reaching network of connections was unlike any other. Simon Hall quickly stepped between the 2 ministers without looking at either of them. He cleared his throat. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. How are you? I am very well and motivated, Mr. Rayne. It seems our ministers are feeling the same. Alright, so I can clearly see that. What was that discussion about? I'm not going to just gloss over this. I'd like to know what the discussion was about, actually. We were having a discussion about the infrastructure plans. If I may, I would like to talk to you about the... Simon interrupted. We will get there, Gus. No rush. First, I would like to conduct my economy presentation. Well, I'm actually interested in what Gus has to say. Of course, Mr. President. Sir, I have some very good construction companies willing to take government contracts in the Greater Holsword and Giesland regions. This would boost the rural economy. I think it would be wise to pick investments that will go through these regions. It will boost the rural economy. That's actually very good. This seems like a good opportunity. Right. Additionally, we can... Lilius interrupted him. A wise idea, if your main agenda is to make money instead of developing the region and serving the people. Could you elaborate? Of course, the argument is simple. England is our weakest region, both in terms of economic and social support. We should support the city of Arvery and its respected mayor. How impartial can you really be? Simon was observing the argument. What are your thoughts, Simon? I'm going to ask him. I have to say that I agree with both of them. England is in need of investment, and we can improve Greater Holsword and Giesland. I want to avoid this topic now, since we will talk about it in the future. I would rather first fully brief you on our current economic situation. Simon pulled a silk handkerchief out of his pocket and briefly wiped his glasses. My staff and I have comprehensively analyzed every aspect of... He was interrupted by a groan from one of the assistants by the door, both of whom were now visibly struggling to hold up the heavy projector. Oh, you can put it there. He pointed below the painting of President Sol. The assistants placed the projector next to the table and installed a white screen on the wall. Leave now. I mean, thank you, and please leave now. The assistants left the cabinet room. I was reminded that Simon had never quite had a way with people, but his facility with numbers had made him the most sought-after economic specialist in Sordland. Simon started looking for his slides. He always carried documentation around with him. All right, so let's just wait. I'm not going to yawn. I mean, come on. We're not immature, impatient people, are we? Lilius leaned to the table and spoke. Simon, what happened to the new police station construction in Sordland? While going through his briefcase, he paused for a moment to answer. It got stalled due to a government property boundary issue. I have been meaning to look at it. I can take a look at that one. Sordland needs all the security help it can get. Sure, more time for me to spend on analyses. His eyes glittered when he finally found the slides he was looking for. There have been some developments about the Sordland losing further value today. We have been trying to stabilize it with the central bank. The recession of '51 put enormous pressure on the economy, resulting in the collapse of the value of our currency. The entire situation was a significant cause of concern for our administration. What would you like to know about the current economic situation? Okay, so let's have a look. Basically, I want to know about unemployment mostly, and the inflation rate, of course. But well, all of these are extremely important, but I'm going to just focus on this one for the moment. Unemployment has skyrocketed and is now at a staggering 16%, and the inflation is at a relatively high, or shall we say a relative high, of 7%. Unemployment is increasing crime and drug use. We need to get people off the streets. The inflation isn't helping our average citizen either. Okay. What is our GDP and debt situation? Our current GDP is 310 billion Sordland, and the national debt is 427 billion. Yes, don't even get me started on country debts. It's kind of ludicrous and ridiculous of a notion to me, but let's not even get into that. It's still hard to fathom that we lost nearly 150 billion in wealth. The past 3 years were tough. Well, what is the what is the status of the recession? The economy has been in a recession of about -6% in the past year. The average GDP has dropped from SR, or Sordland, 15,454 per capita to Sordland 10,359 from 1951 to now. That's actually a massive, massive drop. This administration's success depends on our ability to stop the recession. The sooner we can reach GDP growth, the better. I have all the information I need. Let's move on to the economic strategy. Simon scattered the paper stack in front of him in an orderly manner and took a final look at his notes before clearing his throat. As you can see, the situation is alarming, but not everything is negative. The extensive privatization program of Alfonso left us a large budget surplus which we can use to stabilize the crisis. Oh, okay. The primary subject we need to settle on is what general path we will take in our term. Solonomics-based nationalization happened in the 30s, and Alfonso's privatization began during the end of the 40s. What will our administration focus on? One of our main promises was to promote a free market economy to stop the recession. To be frank, I believe it is the only way out of the recession. I still do not support it. Why promote the private sector when we have qualified state-owned enterprises? Because because the lack of competition has made them inefficient. Simon nodded. Okay, so what are the consequences of the free market? The more of the economy we control, the better we can manage the recession. What are the downsides of the planned economy? Humanity in the 20th century is thriving because of the rule of supply and demand. Okay, what are the consequences of the free market? There are not many, but one could say that we are much more likely to be influenced by the world economy. It is important to think about this subject because the upswings of the world economy will reflect good on ours too. Yes, and when the global economy crashes, we go down with it. The structural problems of Solonomics were going to lead to a recession according to the predictions at the time anyway. Either way, even if we pick one of the doctrines, we retain the option to make economic choices on a case-by-case basis. That is, however, not recommended in my point of view. The last thing we need is a chaotic economic plan. Finally something we can both agree on, Lilius. There is another point, which is rather important, which has a direct impact on our economy. Superpowers. We have done well not aligning ourselves with any one of them. Economically speaking, an isolationist policy overall could only work if we were to reap the benefits of both spheres and their rivalry. This is very dangerous to attempt, but still possible. We must be very cautious. There are schemes being devised about Sordland. We cannot give in to their wants now or in the future, otherwise our country will turn into a pawn. Okay, so Sordland will not be controlled by any nations. Exactly, Saul was right along with all his policies. I still haven't decided if they wish to come with a deal, or time will show if staying neutral will work out. So I'm going to say Sordland will not be controlled by any nations. Precisely my point. We will stand strong and show an example to the world. I hope we won't regret this. Well, actually, technically, I'm just deciding that the country should rule itself. I mean, obviously, that doesn't mean that we are going to be neglecting allying ourselves with anyone. We're just going to make sure that any kind of diplomatic measure that we make is going to be our decision alone. Is that understandable? I actually don't know. I mean, is that okay? I mean, I'm not trying to be like a dictator or anything like that at this point, at least. At this point, he says. Okay, Simon cleared his throat again. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Minister Vichy will be in charge of informing you of those types of foreign policy decisions. We must first decide on our internal economic plan. Simon put forward a legal document outlining the possibilities with both economic doctrines listed. The cabinet members looked at me. Okay. Let's see. Okay. With a free market, you know what? I'm gonna say, let's finish what Alfonso started with the capitalist free market reforms. His path was going to enrich Sordland. Because planned economy is very much closed off. Free market, in my opinion, is probably going to be the best way. Let's do that. I mean, I'm gonna just ask about here we go. Bring us stronger allies. With a free market focus, bring us stronger allies, and it would make Arcasia look at our country in a more positive light. They are proponents of the free market economy. The influence Arcasia has on the world economy is extensive. Our economic strategy should be based on internal reasoning, though. Right. Okay, so I'm gonna go with the free market. We're gonna continue what Alfonso started. The recession was the direct result of his free market reforms. History must note that the reason for the recession was because you old Alfonso was betrayed by his party. That is not true. There was plenty of time for him to do it. If you can't make change happen in 2 years, then you are at fault. Well, what's on our long-term economic schedule? Picking a construction company, trade relations, tax reform, and privatization initiatives would be some of them. Sticking to a solid planned economy strategy will be the right call. The 5-year plans were fruitful in the past. Let's move on. What are your final thoughts then, Mr. President? Okay, so let's have a look here. Critical institutions must remain in state control. We must be fully responsible in delivering services. Well, personally, I don't really feel like privatization is the right way to go. I feel like privatization generally just hurts the common citizen, and I don't really want to do that. So remaining in state control is usually the way to go for me personally. I think that's probably the way to go here. But we should look at yeah. See, now that's the point. Governments usually privatize things to create extra money for themselves to spend on other things. For example, I feel like in the UK especially, we had a Prime Minister by the name of Margaret Thatcher. If you know Margaret Thatcher, then you know what she decided to do. She sold off a lot of our transportation, transportation companies to, privatize them and so on. And I'm not entirely sure what she did with that money, so I don't know about that. Anyway, a market economy doesn't require as much guidance and could help us attract foreign capital. I'm going to say this. Critical institutions must remain in state control. We must be fully responsible in delivering services. Few could be, and it wouldn't be negative, but either way, you make the choices. So, what will our general economic plan promote? Promote a free market economy as we promised. I can't say that I agree with this. Lilius looked displeased. Now that there is clarity on which direction we are heading, I will work on a good plan accordingly. This concludes our meeting. At our next gathering, we will talk about the upcoming infrastructure investment plan. Now that the economic direction was taken, the ministers dispersed. for lunch at the Maroon Palace. Alright, and I think that's probably a pretty good place to stop. There's a lot of reading to do here, a lot of talking to go through, a lot of different meetings and everything, and I am very interested to see what is going to happen going forward. If you'd like to see more, then by all means let me know. Otherwise, you can play the game yourself by purchasing it through the link in the description. And again, this video is not sponsored. I literally just actually really find the game extremely intriguing, and I'd like to see what actually happens. Whether we're going to get a knife in our back sooner or later remains to be seen. Anyway, I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.